And, and I will take notes. I see we're starting it at 6:34. And Montana, I can't, would we see, is there anybody else on the
Yes,
Zoom?
there is David Dineenan. His last name is Dinneen, and then there's David Sinowski.
Okay. So they have full visibility. They just have to be promoted to be a speaker.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me pull up the agenda. Give me, oh, are you able to let me be
Oh,
put up the agenda?
give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, try now.
It looks like I can do that.
Oh.
There we go. So thank you all for gathering. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And when I say your name, please signify aye. Lisa Hewitt? Lisa, you're here?
Hi, can you not hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, good. Okay. And Susan Bryant?
Hi.
Okay. Well, the subcommittee of three of us is all present, and Montana, thank you for hosting us today. Looking at the agenda, our objective is just a working session to focus on drafting a harbor recreation survey. And that's really the topic. And having distributed a working document of that, my thought is we would work off of that. Knowing that there are other participants here, I'd like to also, make sure that they have a chance to weigh in. But what I thought we'd do to go through the survey, and this is just is to look at the document that was distributed via email earlier. And the very first thing is actually ask for comment. If you've had a chance to look at it or you have any comments on it, we could go. Lisa, you could go through. Susan, you could go. Montana, I would really value your input, having constructed Google Forms surveys before, which I think is our target on this, to get your input as well. And then depending on how that goes, we can also do just sort of go through the document. And what I would also, I think, like to do at some point is we'll or maybe this Montana, just for the public who's on there, what is the best way to accommodate their interest in this? To ask if there's questions or to raise their hand? Is that the best way to do it under a panel?
Yeah, so if they want to raise their hand, if they have any questions or comments, I can promote them and pull them in. And then once their comment's done, I can pull them back out as an attendee.
Okay. So I think what I'll do is I will bring up the document in just a moment. We'll go through it. Lisa, ask you for comments, Susan for comments, Montana for comments, and then we can invite comments from the public. And if there's questions, they can raise their hands, and we'd be happy to have that. Before I do that, though, I did a little bit of research on something else we wanted to accomplish, Susan and Lisa, when we met before. So when I met with the select board in November, I told them about the survey. They're quite excited and thought it was very appropriate for us to pursue this. Notwithstanding all the mooring stuff that's going on, et cetera, the survey is a very interesting topic to get really good input. We also said that we wanted to invite participation, let's say from other committees. And what I looked at is we've met with the Open Space and Planning Board in December. And it turns out that the Historic Commission is meeting January 8th. Rec Commission's meeting January 10th. And Sidewalks Committee is meeting January 11th. I just looked at that today to see the agendas. They do not, I have not asked to be on the agenda, but that is something I think, worked very well for us to meet with Open Planning and Open Space Committee. And I would like, we can talk about that at the end of today's discussion about continuing that.
Great.
Sound good? The other thing I would say is an objective of mine today is to see if we can get through, with our comments, that we could get to another level of draft of this survey that we could then that we could, at the very least, review with the Harbor Committee when we meet in a couple of weeks and get their approval to move forward. So that, potentially we have the approval to move forward with the survey without needing to convene or wait for the next meeting of the Harbor Committee in March. That's a thought. We'll just have to play that out when we get to that meeting. Does that sound good? I'm going to stop sharing this, if I can, again, remember how, okay, I'll stop share that.
George, can I ask that we do one thing?
Yeah, sure.
Just so that we're all on the same page. Can we remind ourselves what our goal of the survey is?
Sure.
Like, what are we really trying to get out of it and why? Like, are
Okay.
we trying to get the townspeople to help us accurately and appropriately prioritize the actual needs for the recreation community, or are we trying to do something different?
Well, let me pull up the survey and let's have that. Let's talk about that.
But I feel like I need that information as a basis for which to review the document that you sent.
Okay.
Like, are we trying to get people to say a particular thing? Are we trying to get, proof for something that we want to do? Are we trying to get an honest input from people, or what are we looking for?
So the purpose of the survey is to get information about Cohasset Harbor and how people use or choose to use it for recreational purposes.
But why are we trying to get that information?
Well, to inform our committee with much more information about that, because
can I propose?
Let me finish, Susan. Susan, what did you ask? You asked why do we want this?
Yeah, I would like the answer to be because we're trying to get an accurate sense of what appropriate priorities would be. And we're trying to get more input from the community so that our priorities are appropriate and accurate.
Okay, that's a pretty
everybody?
good one.
I'm sure
Yep.
we said something before as what our goals were, and I don't have my notes in front of me from last meeting, so I can't remember exactly what we had said, but it seems like that's why we're doing this.
Well, help us prioritize people's recreational interest in the harbor. Sure.
Yeah, I don't think what you're both saying is contradictory. I think you're just positing in different ways. I'm hoping that the priority is to get a better sense of the priorities and what the recreational use wants are of the community. Whereas in the past, the Harbor Committee did have some focus groups, etc., but it was a very limited amount of people who were able or knew to participate in that. So that's why I think we're excited about this initiative, and also the selectmen were in favor of it.
Yeah. Okay, so looking at it, I'd like to take a really forward-facing look at it, so that everything that we ask people is enabling us to plan for the future. Because we don't really need to go back and look at the past, because that's already been there and the infrastructure was there for that. What we really need is to figure out what people want and what we need to include in anything going forward, because that's the only thing we can impact anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we have a lot of extra words in this particular version that I think it makes the whole thing really a bit long and unwieldy. And I think we should go straight to the point so that people know what we're doing, and then we're not just trying to get them to fill in a bunch of things that we could get, because there's a lot of information we can get elsewhere. Like, we can get the membership list of all the organizations in town. We can get the mooring list. We can get the marina list. We can count all the boats in the harbor. So I don't feel like we should be wasting people's time doing that when what we really want is their honest input about what they and their family want in the future. And then for
Okay.
that, I feel like you really have to coach people into thinking in a futuristic way. So say I'm 58
Well-
right now, I'm athletic, I use CMI and I row, but at some point in the future, if I'm still in Cohasset, I may need a walker. I may need a
So
wheelchair.
Susan, why don't we look at that? It sounds like you have looked at the survey, and
I have, yeah, and I kind of
let's go
redesigned.
through it and
I kind of
identify
redesigned it
those.
because I felt like I redesigned it because first of all, we would eventually put it on a Google Forms or we put it on Survey 123. And I make a lot of surveys for CSCR, so I feel like I think that way generally. So I did take another stab at it and writing it for a Google Doc, which I can share with you at any second on the screen or by email.
Did you,
Can we start with some overarching, maybe comments from all of us and then get granular?
Yeah, I thought that was pretty overarching. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just
Yep.
take us off down the wrong track. I just thought that we needed to start with overarching, which is like big picture. Why? What are our goals? Because then we can really focus on it.
and I agree with you, we're focusing on the future. None of us are proposing to change the past.
I wish I could.
And I will say, I guess not to say that this document, I mean, it is only my work. It is only a draft. I wanted to start out with something and to try and at least put my thoughts down on paper. A lot of the demographic information is to try and provide context for answers. I completely agree with you that we can find information about who are members of what committees or whether, what the mooring list is. But my bigger interest is in when somebody answers this survey, what is their perspective based on how they participate in the harbor? Whether they're members of something or if they're not and they feel excluded. That was where a lot of the context was. It certainly isn't to take account of who's member of CSCR or CMI or Yacht Club.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying with that, and let's come back to that.
Okay. Well, listen, why don't we, I guess, walk around and maybe Lisa, give you a chance to talk at a high level or detailed level, Susan,
Sure.
and then Montana, and then Susan, and then we'll see and potentially look at the document you've done, Susan. I don't know on that yet, but let's just walk around and get everybody's perspective. Lisa, starting with you.
Sure. First off, thank you for putting all this work into it. I mean, and I appreciate, with like any other survey, we're going to work with it, but this seems to be very thorough. I do agree that it's probably a little bit too granular. And for an attention span of a person who's actually going to be taking a survey. I also have done some survey work. It's been a while, but sometimes you're going to lose people at some point. I wondered, my first reaction was, is this just supposed to be for recreational? Because I noticed we didn't ask anything about fishermen and, other commercial needs, but is it the intent for just a recreation survey? And I suppose now that I see the title, it was supposed to be just close textual analysis.
That is the intent. I think it'd be a pretty different survey if it also
Sure.
includes commercial and fishing interests on a commercial basis.
Yeah, I think some of this could be some of this language could be consolidated, and I think some of the language, and I know that's where you get into the granular analysis of using words like are you a resident, or as opposed to do you have a Cohasset address? Some people are going to not want to give their email.
Okay.
And I don't know what we want to do about that. Some people don't want to be identified. They want to just put in their they want to be anonymous. That's something that you decide how we're gonna handle it. You know, do we only want people who wanna
Okay,
commit to their opinion on it? I appreciate what Susan's saying about, are you members of certain organizations? I think it helps to see who are already engaged, and if 78% of those who, you know, fill out the survey belong to none or very few of these organizations, and that says
Yeah.
something very different than everyone who responds to our survey belongs to one of these organizations. I kind of got a tickle. You can tell that you like boats, George, because it was Powerboat of 13, Powerboat or more, you know.
it's funny, when I wrote that, I wrote motorboat or something last year. I'm like, I'm trying to think, okay, that was when I was playing in a boat on a lake in North
Yeah.
Carolina back in the 70s.
But
That's what we called them.
right. But I, you know, I appreciate some of this stuff could be obviously consolidated.
Yeah.
You know, now I'm getting granular, so I apologize. Some of these things, you know, do you keep your boat a public dock, private dock? You know, a lot of people trailer, you know, or do you launch it? I mean, that is that type of thing. But this is a sort of stuff that we can polish as we go, and this is not an overarching. I think the length has to be shortened, and I
Yes.
wasn't sure if this, and Montana, you probably could advise us, so Susan, on this about, you know, will you just be clicking, you know, fields, you know, for all that apply, you know? But I then when you got down to grant 3 wishes, which I thought was kind of cute. But the priority.
I hope that's future looking, but yeah, it is a bit
Um,
cute, but yes.
And I didn't mean cute in a pejorative, I meant.
No, I agree that it's, you know, is it a bit flippant to do a town survey and say, you know, pretend you're a genie in a bottle?
Right. You know,
yeah.
but some of these things, I think, once again, we could consolidate,
Yeah.
just to make it easier for people to think in those terms. I'm just flipping through the various. Oh, and then at the end, and Montana and Susan, I'm interested in your input on this, is the idea of leaving an ended questions, because in the surveys that I've done in the past, sometimes even though it's not, you don't want to have a bunch of them and it's hard to represent them in any sort of meaningful manner, sometimes you get some good comments from people.
Oh, yeah.
Who bothered to get to the end and who bothered to say something, and oftentimes it's uplifting. You know, they thank you for the survey, or they point out something that we didn't think of, et cetera, et cetera. So I suppose the takeaways that I would leave with is just, we have to kind of make the language a lot tighter.
So I'll comment to that. You're picking up on something I know is call it a weakness of mine. I have an analytical bent. So what I'm trying to do is put down everything I can think of. I agree the thing's way too long for a survey, the way it's written.
Right.
And I think where I was trying to do is imagine the possibilities of the answers that we're seeking. And then I would love for this group to figure out a way to accommodate those kind of answers, but in a much more concise format.
Right. No, it was very helpful to trigger, you know, some of the different issues. And I kind of laughed a little bit. Running for fitness. Well, are you running because a dog's chasing you? No. So there's that sort of thing.
Yep. There's a lot of words here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And hanging out on the border bridge, which is one of my pet peeves because I can't drive by there, is as long as you didn't say jumping off the bridge, because that is illegal.
I know that.
Yeah.
But it's certainly, there's a constituents of people who hang out on the Border Street Bridge.
Right.
You know, that's barely at the harbor, but it's close.
Sure. And the other comment was, do you think everybody knows I know what the Bellarmine House is, but do you think generally people know what the Bellarmine House is in your intro?
I think the intro, I'll just say part of the structure of this was, I looked at Montana, the 2 surveys you did, and saw that there's an intro. I think
it's helpful. I think it gets
people. Intro's good.
Right.
This one's too long. Bellarmine House probably, I was trying to find a way to capture the scope of the survey. What do we mean by Cohasset Harbor? And I'll just tell you my thought about Cohasset Harbor is basically, within the breakwater. and really just things that we can affect, which is the walkway around the harbor and the docks and the use of the harbor in that. But, I wasn't trying to get it to expand out into Whitehead or the use of Bassing's Beach or stuff like that, that is, changes the scope. That was my thought. It doesn't mean
Sure.
we can't do it. It was just, that's what's behind my thoughts.
The other thing is I almost would put number 7 as like number 2 or 3. It talks about how often do you visit the Cohasset Harbor? And I
Mhm.
also wouldn't limit it to the summertime because, especially post-COVID, we have people constantly around, which is great.
Yeah. Also, my thinking on that was that most of the other questions related to either boating or use of docks, which, from a recreational point of view, aren't that significant. But, I also don't know the questions, is that answer even something we would do something with? That's sort of
Mhm.
the lens to put this through. Is that question important enough to stay on the survey?
I suppose if someone said they never, if we found that, 38% say never, that they're never down at the harbor, that tells us something too.
Yeah, or we have an open-ended question, and if somebody says, I visit the harbor daily and this is what matters to me, we might catch that in an open-ended question.
Okay, but thank you. That's pretty much my.
No, this is good. So what I thought we'd do is move maybe to Montana and get your structural view of this, and then come back to you, Susan, and then see if there's questions also coming from other participants. Montana, what is your thoughts?
Similar to Lisa's, just condensing a few of the questions. I think I'd say majority of them are pretty relevant. I mean, you also don't have to necessarily get rid of them. We can just combine a few instead, so you can still have part of those questions there, because if these are thoughts that you want answers to, then that means it matters. The intro I think is fine, because like in terms of Google Docs, like it doesn't take away from your questions part, like, and it's definitely good to have an intro. And I will be honest, I don't know what the Bella Marin Hyde house is. Is that's not the Lightkeeper's house, right?
No, it's the mansion that's next to the yacht club that belongs to the Jesuits.
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
think it has
like
to be in there at all.
students. Okay, like people can use that house during summertime to like for studying.
No,
No, it's privately owned.
Never mind.
actually, it's owned
I
by
walked through that
Boston,
property a lot.
owned by Boston College now.
Yeah, the
Thank
Jesuits.
you. Okay, yeah. Yes, BC.
we've-
That's what I like going through walks through their property. I go there quite frequently during COVID. Okay.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
We wish it could
maybe
do that.
yeah, maybe leave it out, because
Yeah,
I mean
oh,
it
yeah.
might, like, I think it's good for a geographical perspective, but it might confuse people more if you leave that in there. Otherwise, you should definitely have an intro just to have an idea, like give people an idea what this is for. When I was looking over like the multiple choice, like I was just saying, like we can just combine a few of those.
Yeah.
And I was saying, like we have to think of this as our audience as like 5-year-olds with ADHD. So I think maximum 5 multiple choices for your multiple choice questions. And then the last question, 7, I think should go up top, like Lisa was saying. And then I think 6A can be like your last open-ended question, but you could expand it a little more. Just be like, is there anything else that you feel like we are missing that is important to you? Just make the person who's answering this feel important, that like these questions are going to good use, that it's not going to like, not that we're not making this for no reason, obviously, but just making them feel like that it's going for a good purpose and that they're not wasting their time, like that kind of idea.
Montana, could you
yeah.
just repeat that concept? Because I'm not sure I fully captured it, and I want to make
Yeah.
sure I do.
Just so like 6A, I think that could be a great last question. I think that should be your last question, and it should be open-ended, and you can expand it a little more. And set like you can say, can you please briefly explain why this is your number priority wish, or please add any other comments that you feel might be important to you that we did not include. Just because like when I was kind of saying this at I think our last meeting. I hate answering surveys where I just feel like it's going like
On and
nowhere.
on.
Yeah, like I'm wasting my time. And so it really like I was just doing my survey for the end of my course for my master's program, and they did a really good job of making me feel like my input is going to make a change for the next course, and like my opinion actually matters. They're actually going to review all this stuff. They kept saying questions like, where do you think we can make improvements? Where do you feel like we did our best? How would you say we could improve these things? Just making me feel like I'm not wasting my time, because I'll be honest, I never did them in undergrad because I felt like I was wasting my time. But
But
in my
so
master's, I felt like
we're-
there's quality there, what they're going towards.
what I'm taking away from that though is sort of a personalized way of asking the question.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. No, that's great input.
Otherwise, that's really it. Just condensing a few things, which I can like, I think like all the fitness related things you could squish together.
Yeah.
Any like leisure activity you could squish together. Anything related to like sidewalks or roads or crosswalks squished together. And like again, I have these highlighted on my doc so I can forward them to you so you can do a
Oh,
comparison.
great.
But otherwise I think they're great, very important questions. And like I just actually met with Alternative Energy Committee, and they're creating a survey for a project they're working on. And Tanya Bodell was saying like how much the select board values surveys like given to the residents, because it's like, oh, people actually care. You're not just bringing nonsense to us. Like you've felt everyone out, you care, they care, and now like you're not wasting their time either by bringing this to them. Like it's an important topic.
So let me ask, are you you're also a liaison to alternative energy, right?
Yeah, I just started like a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Well, and I value the smartness on that committee. How far along are they on their survey?
They are also just starting. They're doing so they set their like 2023 priorities in April of last year, and they're doing an end of year survey basically. I'm not exactly sure how they're getting their surveys out necessarily,
Okay,
but they're creating it at their next meeting, which is the 11th, so next Thursday, and talking about what they want to put on their survey. So if you want me to like give you feedback on their best, like how they approach it the best way, when I see you guys on the 17th, I can talk about that because I'm sure
sure.
this will also be on the agenda again.
That'd be great.
Okay.
So you have, not to say I value all your verbal comments just now, Montana, but you've marked up or commented the document with some of your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I can email it to you after
All
this
right.
meeting.
And Susan, I am getting your email, so I'll bring up your stuff in just a minute, and we can use that as the basis for your comments. But so
I also have, I also marked up the one that you gave us, but I'm not sure I can email it to you. I was
well,
trying to do
that's
that.
all right. Whatever you want to bring up. I think I'm appreciate the comments, and only after putting this out and you guys saying, wow, is this the survey, George, that you would release? And I'm like, no, thank goodness there's people who know how to make things smaller, condensed, not as verbose, because that's I can't help myself. So I think this will be actually it'll be greatly improved. Not greatly improved, it'll be a good survey. We'll just say that. That's the intent. One thing I would like to do is, as we're thinking through this, is we'll want to, get a survey that I think the four of us, Montana very much including you, Lisa, Susan, I can agree on is pretty good. And then we want to test it with
Right.
ourselves, with Harbor Committee, and not a huge group, but a big enough group that people can come back to us and tell us whether things made sense or not. And whether we actually got, actionable results or results that we think would be actionable, based on the questions we ask. If
And
that makes
also
sense.
something to remember is don't like spelling it out is really good for people because you never know who your audience is. So like don't feel like you have too many words all the time, because like there are some people that just really if you have to spell it out for them word
Yeah.
for words. It is A-okay.
Yeah.
Tana, can I ask you a quick question? I know you're probably active in, various municipal, groups. Have there been other harbor studies done or questionnaires done that you might be aware of, that you could learn from?
Do you mean like harbor studies, like surveys or
Yeah,
like
surveys.
actual like surveys?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware
Right.
of, in terms of grants, and if there were surveys, it would be before my time. I'm not
Mhm.
sure. I think was Cassandra the person before me? Do you
Mhm.
guys remember?
Mhm.
I can talk to her tomorrow and ask her if she
Yeah.
ever did any surveys, but
Oh, no,
there
I'm not talking about in Cohasset. I'm talking about, did you know, maybe Hingham did a similar thing or Marshville did a similar thing that, we could learn from, what they did.
yeah, I can definitely peek around, but I can't guarantee anything. I'll definitely
Sure.
look into it next week.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Susan, turning to you, would you like me to bring up your Google Forms doc and I'll share that, or,
I can do it right here. My share screen button
Okay.
is available, it looks like. I think. New computer, maybe not.
actually, I just clicked on it anyway and I need permission, so it'd be better
Oh,
if
give
you
me,
do it.
sorry.
It'd be-
Hold on.
Maybe I can't share my screen.
Give it a try now.
Oh, was it your end or my end? It might be my end because it's, oh God, new computer.
But Montana, you've enabled her, any one of us can share, is that right?
Yeah, everyone should be able to share right now.
And you guys should
Thank-
all have
thank you.
access to the document as editors.
Well, yeah,
Step one, let's try that. It's some privacy thing on my screen. Okay. So did you have the link, right?
I do, but it says I can only be viewed by users in the owner's organization.
Oh,
So
because I shared it to you. I wasn't sure. The thing that kept, let me just add it again.
Oh, hold on.
I
If
added
you
you as your
shared,
other, I added it through your other email, not your Cohasset email, because the Cohasset email I had.
oh, okay. No, let me try it. Let me try it.
Yeah, I see it's a Google.
Okay, I got it. I got it.
Great. And then Lisa, I have the one that I had for you is your LMHEWITT@gmail.com.
Well,
Yeah,
let me try. I'll just share it and
That'd
then
be
we can
great.
talk through it. I think that's
Yeah.
the simplest place to start.
Okay, and then Montana, I'm sharing it with you too, but I have your Cohasset.
Well-
Wait, does the bottom middle to go?
Susan, can you see
Yeah,
it?
the
Can you
Cohasset
see
one
it
is
on the
fine.
screen?
Yep, that's it.
So why don't we just have you talk us through your thinking about
Okay.
the survey?
All right. So so my first thought was that when you're talking about the three wishes and asking what people's three wishes are, whether it's cute or not, that really is the essence of what we're trying to get at.
I'm
And
glad
that's
you liked it.
similar to, oh, there are lots of parts that I liked. There's and that's sort of similar to what Montana was saying about when she was asked per se by her program, what can we do better? That's really what
Could you make this a little bigger?
Oh, I'll
Possible.
try.
Yeah,
Hold on. Let me,
otherwise you're gonna see.
no,
And then
hold on a sec.
Lisa, you should be able to access the document straight from your.
Well,
the
let's look at it together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. if
I-
possible.
Is this better?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. So not showing so much on the screen, but I'll just scroll down as
Okay.
we look at
Thank you.
things.
Okay, so my main point is that the three wishes really is the essence of it. And then the other concern I had was the putting the email and requesting the address up top is sort of a breach of anonymity, as we pointed out earlier in the discussion. So that should be at the bottom. I think that should be at the bottom, or it should.
Well, let me just pause on that. Montana, I noticed you did that on on some of your surveys, and I'm wondering that are for the town. wondering if that's a structural thing or what was the thinking behind the plastic bottle survey and others where you asked for email addresses.
The banning the plastic water bottle survey was for Adam Norman and another woman who's on the open space and rec committee. I was doing it for them, so I was kind of just structuring it in a way that I saw like best for them. In terms of the composting one, I was kind of just like going with my train of thought and like
Okay,
importance of my questions and like the relevance to each of them. The way like I honestly like it was just me. Like
okay,
there's no real reason behind
That's-
it.
that's fine. I copied that thought and I also don't sort of agree, do we need that information or not? I will tell you my thought on the survey, and part of this was generated in previous discussions with Harbor Committee around the new pier, the new dock that was proposed, is this can go to non-Cohasset people, and it will, because we want to send it out to the mooring list and the mooring waiting list. And those are people, can include people from all over. What I'm trying to do, and I think it'd be really helpful to the select board, is attempt to identify answers that are coming from people who live in Cohasset and answers that come from people who don't live in Cohasset.
Yeah, I suppose the other issue that I thought of, and I think I mentioned it at one of our earlier meetings, we want to make sure that the surveys are not only answered by people on Parker Ave and, and Border Street and possibly Elm. We truly want to have a sense of people from all over, especially people, Beechwood and, wherever, we want a kind of a sense that this was answered by a good cross-section of the community. Perhaps we could identify different parts of town or
Yeah, that's what I
something
would,
like that,
I would suggest we do that, and that we do that with a map. And then people could click on a region of town, and then that would preserve their address and their anonymity, and that would still give us an indication that we'd captured the diversity of populations of town that we want to get. So that would be a question for one of you to figure out how to, like, what would those divisions be? I mean, I think that that harbor front people have different, are going to have different responses than distant people, like
I
us
think
crazy
that's,
people on Forest Ave.
no, I think that is the interest. So, we don't need all we're trying, somehow want to protect the survey from getting spammed.
right?
And hopefully we can do that and then avoid it, somehow trying to distinguish, do you live in Cohasset or not?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least ask the questions. And I think some of the questions about moorings and boats may head that way, but in any case, okay.
So, all right, so then if you just go up to the top of it, so I got rid of the Bellarmine Estate sentence altogether, because if you're understanding Cohasset Harbor, then you don't need that identification. So, and then I also just put a little thing why we're doing it so that people know. And then I stuck with your 3 wishes as being the essence of the whole thing.
Mhm.
And then also just considering the needs of yourself as your family as you age. And you may have new children coming into your family as you go forward. I liked your question about the describe why and the time frame for your wish. And then I think we're trying to get at the safety issues. And that's, I mean, if people feel unsafe, that really is something to address. So I reworded some of your safety questions into one question. Do you and your potential family members and other residents feel safe recreating in the harbor? If everybody feels safe, we don't have to do anything about that. If they don't always feel safe, then that is a very worthy cause for us to look into.
The question I would have on that, having to deal with the questions of safety all the time in my work, what does that mean, feel safe?
I agree.
You can feel safe that because you don't really know what you're doing on the water. You could feel safe because you think people are out there drinking. You could feel safe. I'm not sure.
I think that's what we want to get at. Like, if there's things that we can mitigate for people, like if they don't feel safe for a specific reason, and it's something that we could think about some sort of structure or culture or signage or, God forbid, litigation that would fix that problem for them, that would increase accessibility. And I think that's kind of part of our mission, is to do that. And
Well,
to
so
me,
let me, I'll give a little, just sort of reacting to the survey. Part of, and this is maybe my thought process. I was, with my detailed questions or multiple choice up front, was trying to give some context for the type of answers we want back. Now, that being said, open-ended questions are good. I do feel the word safe is a huge word, and I would want to actually put bounds around that, depending on what we can actually do. Because I'm not trying to, I mean, when I hear just generally, do you feel safe? It's almost like, do you consider that you might get robbed or assaulted walking
exactly.
along
Not correct.
Cohasset Harbor? And
Yeah.
whether that's true or not, it's not, it's an interesting answer. I'd love to see it in open-ended. I don't necessarily want to lead the witness into that.
okay, I don't want to belabor that point too much, but when you say what is the context for that we want to know the context for the questions, or we want to know the context for the answers, I think that's a weird bias, and I'm not sure why
This survey
what that
is
means.
about, yeah, this survey is, I think, as we talked about earlier, is about recreation.
Yeah,
and
right.
so
So
I
so I
don't
would
see.
say,
Yeah.
let me just, can I just explain the safety thing? Because I put it that way. I think that if you specify what safety means to different people, then it's not really authentic, because you could feel safe doing one thing and I could feel unsafe doing something. And I feel like if people feel unsafe that they might get robbed, then you end up looking for the dark holes and the unlit places. And if people don't feel people don't feel like somebody's going to jump out from a dark place, then we don't have to overly light things. But I feel that asking where people feel unsafe is actually really, really informative, because they're going to tell us their honest truth. Maybe they don't feel safe because the curbs aren't safe, or the curbs are too high,
Yeah.
or because the road, the traffic is too fast, or the seawall is too scary.
Well,
So these are all
let's
things
go
that would
through.
fall into our purview, and a lot of them are design elements and planning elements that can be addressed. And a lot of them wouldn't fall under our department. Some of them might be relayed just to the police department, and we say, a bunch of people aren't feeling safe, maybe you can patrol a little.
I guess
But-
I'm still going through. Let's go through. I'm looking sort of at the prominence of the question, and I guess
Well,
I
there's
need
not
to
too many.
think about how prominent. We basically got, what are your wishes? Describe them, and do you feel safe? And please describe that. And
Nope. Only describe if you feel there's something that could be.
I know, but it's
Excellent.
it's just very prominent in terms of where it lays in the survey and how much focus is being given to it.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
we
think-
could combine those two questions then, so it's specifically asking for amelioration ideas.
Well, so we've got that. I think we've covered, I mean, for purposes of today's discussion for this moment, I understand where you're coming from, Susan. Let's keep going, and because this looks like there's a little bit more to go here.
Okay, so then I just combined all the many possible things and ways that we three could figure out that people use the harbor. And I put them all into one gigantically, ridiculously long list. So that's impossible. And that would need to be edited and reformatted. And I don't know why we need, I think we should only ask questions that we actually need the answers to.
Well, so Susan,
So
I guess I put those.
can I just finish describing my
Yep,
thought
please
process
do.
here? So, because you had like 5 different questions that had a lot of details like this. So I think we can cut it. You guys can work on cutting that down to whatever is useful. I don't know what's useful for us, because I don't know what we're looking for, but I just sort of put all the lists in one thing. Okay, so skip over that long one. And then I don't know whether we need the next question. What infrastructure, signage, services, cultural practices, aesthetics do you wish could be improved? Because maybe it's redundant with the first question. So maybe we take some of the wording of that one and some of the wording for the first one and merge them. But I think the point is we would just really want everybody's ideas on what should be improved and matters to them. That's really the essence of the survey. And then the next one is a positive one, just so that we know if there's things that, you know, we would hate to have somebody's most valuable asset be overlooked because somebody else was complaining about it. Like if 90% of the people friggin' love the white fence and
Mhm.
10% feel that, you know, that's a hazard, then we need to know that there's a balance, that you can't just cater to the whiners all the time. You need to also cater
Okay.
to the people who are appreciative. And then anything else to contribute is that general question that we thought would be nice to add. And then, do you have Cohasset address? Yes or no? Because that is the valuable question, I think, as far as context. I think if they don't have a Cohasset address, it's a very different answer than if they do. I think if they don't have a Cohasset address, we need to be really careful about remembering that if we're getting federal funding or state funding, a lot of those state and federal funding sources come with stipulations that it has to be publicly available to anybody. It can't be restricted to Cohasset residents. So that's important for us always to think about. And then click the map of the place, map of the area of town, and then we can figure out what our parameters for deciding which regions, you know, where to draw those regional differences.
Okay.
And that's
No,
it.
Susan, this is helpful. I think, you know, my feeling about the Cohasset address is the select board wants to know what the people of Cohasset think. And, you know,
Yes.
whether you do federal funding of something as a result of that or not is step 3 or step 300. But
Right, but like you said, it's interesting to get the input of the people who might be on the mooring list. But to know,
Yeah.
which is which.
Oh, totally. Yep. And I think from a simplicity point of view, I like the idea of trying to figure out, you know, where the answers are coming from in Cohasset.
Mhm.
It needs to be simple. I don't know if people would recognize where they sit on a map in Cohasset if all you did is show a map of Cohasset practically. But something that would, you know, I think Montana, you've made the point. It needs to be easy to fill out on a smartphone. I believe you
that
said
too.
that.
Exactly.
So however this thing gets done, that it can be done on a smartphone as easily as on a computer, that's where we want to be, I believe.
Mhm. So this whole thing could also be converted to Survey 123.
So I haven't really talked about how to distribute it. I was mostly looking, again, thinking of Montana has offered to help us implement this. Montana, and I don't, Survey 123, is that similar to Survey Monkey or you know, one of those? Is it a public tool?
Survey 123 is ArcGIS. So the town has an ArcGIS account. The beauty of Survey 123 is that you can add geographical points to your answers.
And what would that advantage that sounds like it's appropriate to ArcGIS, how does that play to this survey, Susan?
Well, my initial thought is that you could do the click the map. I know you could do the click the map for the area that you live in. And I know how to do that. You can probably do it on Google Forms too, but I haven't done it yet.
And it is so just thinking about what we've talked about for distribution of this, I am interested in where people live and not having this thing being skewed one way or another.
Mhm.
That being said, we've talked about what the distribution is. It's going to be a huge random group that it goes to, as wide as we can get in the town.
Mhm.
And it's much more random as to who actually responds. So I think it's interesting. It'll be interesting for us to know, but I'm not positive how informative it'll be to know where people live in Cohasset who responded to this. I think it's cool to know. I just don't know how effective it'll be.
Yeah, I think the numbers of respondents is the most important thing, you know, in a ranking. I mean, I'd be interested in knowing what people on the other side of town, from where I live, what their views are, only because I think that people do have different perceptions about access. to the harbor. But if it's gonna be complicated or people are not comfortable responding, then so be it. Let's just start.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I wouldn't want to put my personal address in there because you guys would know it's me.
but so I don't think we need that. I mean, I had it on there partially because I've just seen it otherwise,
Mhm.
but so do we need, other than knowing, or at least asking the question, you know, do you live in Cohasset or not? Do we want or need anything? Not that it has to be definitive at this moment, but how important is any other question?
I think my opinions have evolved on it, as far as not feeling it's as important as I once did.
So just
Beyond knowing
Cohasset,
that you are
Cohasset or
not,
not?
right, resident, not, right.
Okay. It'll simplify things.
Yeah.
You know, so Susan, commenting back to part of the structure of the question is, again, I was interested in knowing, you know, is the person who's responding, do they currently sort of have access to the harbor through one of the organizations, or don't they? Do they have access to the harbor because they either have a mooring or a boat on a dock, or don't they? Because I sensed, even from our planning board discussion, there's the haves and the have-nots, and there could be a million reasons for people, you know, either being part of an organization or not. But I was curious to get a feel within the, you know, if they had three wishes, I was interested, you know, are those three wishes because they're not part of any organization and this is what they'd like, or that, you know, they're, you know, 30-year member of the yacht club and they have these three wishes, you know, that to me, that provides a very, you know, it provides an interesting piece of context to evaluate answers.
So maybe we revisit our goals again, because it sounds like maybe it's important for us to share with the rest of the community the haves and have-nots in terms of access. So if we have a survey that bubbles up that there's a lack of access, if that there's a specific problem with access, like there's distinct, that many people in Cohasset feel they do not have the access they should,
Yeah,
then that's actually really useful. So maybe we actually add a question that gets at that, maybe more specifically, so that we don't have to deduce whether their organization is properly giving them access, but we can just ask them how they feel about their access.
Well, we were moving on from the safety question. And frankly, I was going to add, I would prefer that the language talk about accessibility than safety. Because that is in essence what we're getting to.
right.
How do you feel you have accessibility to the harbor? And then you could further hone that down to say, you know, are you members, and do you get your accessibility through some of these organizations? Are you?
Well, in terms of, so where I was going again with detail is, you know, accessibility is also another big word.
Yeah.
You know, in terms
Well,
of.
then use access, you
No,
know?
but
Yeah.
either way, I mean, so I think I think it's helpful within the context of a Cohasset Harbor Recreation Survey
Mhm.
to provide a little bit of context over, you know, what does accessibility mean or not. That's where I was thinking. And actually,
Yeah.
I don't care whether people are members of this or that or the other club.
Yeah.
I was sort of interested, are you a member of any club or a participant in any club? Or are you, you know, do you have access to any dock? You know, whether it's
Yeah.
the marina, the yacht club, or
Right.
one of the public docks, that kind of thing. Just to, because then I think if you had that, then the open-ended questions that go with that survey would make more sense than if you didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's like a table and you have the different kinds of access and whether they feel like they have it, they could get it if they wanted it, and they can't get it if they want it. If that would bubble out what you're looking for, or if we just ask people specifically, how do you feel like your access to recreation on the harbor could be improved? I mean, people might have some smart answers
Yeah.
to that. Like I could have a
Well,
million.
that's sort of, I'm just
code or-
wrestling with how, how do you make that? Again, I think for a survey that I highly value open-ended questions. I also highly value statistically countable
Exactly.
multiple choice questions,
Right.
where they matter and where there's some actionability on that stuff.
Yeah,
Whereas you
actionability,
really
as long as they
can't.
can be useful to us, yes. I
Yeah,
don't want to
well-
collect a whole bunch of data just for collecting data if it's not actually.
Susan, we're not saying that. That's why we're here. That if we're asking questions, there has to be a reason for them. And it's, to me, either to inform our future actions or to provide context to the questions we're getting, to other questions on the survey. Thus, are you a Cohasset resident or not? That's a very good example of one that provides context that we need.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's
Um,
some valuable questions here that are more valuable than others. And so I think that's what we have to kind of focus in on. Like, should there be a boat rental place for those who do not have access? Things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The three wishes, actually, let me stop sharing. Actually, Susan, before I stop sharing, am I stopped sharing?
No, you're still sharing.
I can't even see what I'm sharing. Okay, there it is. I had hidden it. Is there other thoughts on this survey before I stop sharing it that we haven't discussed?
But just the last thing is, I just think it's good to thank people. You probably had that on yours too. And also, if people wanted, I think it's a good idea to provide a way for people to contact and provide input going forward.
Okay, that's
a
awesome.
great idea.
That's
Yep.
just a nice thing to add, and it's
Well,
it maintains the transparency and
I mean,
accessibility of the committee to other people.
what I did, you're sparking a thought, Susan. When I met with the select board, part of what I told them the objective of the survey was to show that we are listening,
Mhm.
that we can provide hopefully valuable information to the select board, but particularly that we're listening. And what the survey will also do is potentially identify to a number of people in Cohasset that this harbor committee exists or that something exists.
Yeah,
because
so-
why would they know?
Right. So you could
Yeah.
use that last little block, if it's a Google form, that last little block, you could put a lot of information in there, like friendly
I'm sure.
information. I think
I
it's
mean, it was basically the harbor committee sponsoring this, but
with a nice little background picture.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could put something at the very end that refers to, and to keep up to date with harbor committee activities, check the agenda of the town of Cohasset or something like that,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what are we in a recreation survey? Well, actually, I'm going to go back and reshare the Word document if I can find it. Here we are. What questions? So we're talking about recreation. So it's sort of, I have the document up, but maybe put away from that. We're asking about recreation. Recognize that there was an interesting thing that came up when we met with Open Space, which is they talked about hiking trails. Like, okay, not necessarily my hunt, but it wasn't something I had thought of.
Right.
Hiking trails that are spawned off of the harbor. And I think when we meet with, and I do want to come back to this, meet with Historic Commission, meet with the Recreation Commission, meet with the Sidewalks Committee, not that I need to anticipate their comments, but what might they think of? What are we missing?
Yeah.
And I will say that the safety thing that I originally had in here was based on Captain's Walk and walking around the harbor, which I feel is unsafe at the get-go. And I wasn't thinking about safety, that may be supplied by the police for, security kind of safety, or the safety that presumably is covered by the harbor master for boating safety. Wasn't really thinking about that. I was thinking about the structure of the Captain's Walk and how unsafe it is for walkers and riders and cyclists. That's what I was thinking.
Mm,
Yeah, but
Um,
I think the recreation survey is supposed to go beyond just the Captain's Walk. I mean, I think our
well,
goals
no,
a little
but
farther beyond that.
Captain's Walk is a very specific, so called a specific thing we're trying to get more intel on, and would love to have, you know, some responses on the survey that inform some of the hypotheses we have about the Captain's Walk. That was a driver, you know, call it a bias of mine, but that's part of what's behind the questions I had on the survey.
right.
Well, do we need to revisit the goals again then?
Well, I don't
No,
know
I
about
think the
revisiting.
goals are pretty- I
it's
don't think
ex-
our goals have shifted in any
Okay,
fashion.
No.
and or do we
No.
need to frame a question specifically so that people contribute input directly to this? And I don't know exactly how you define the Captain's Walk. I don't know if you define it as sidewalks and walk-in pedestrian walkway, or whether it's a particular edge of harbor, or whether, I mean, like, yeah, what's in the harbor walk and
Well,
what's
so
out of
I-
it? Not totally sure I know.
So
But
it's not specified in the survey, but it's basically a function of how do you interact with the harbor in other than in a boat?
Right.
Do you walk? Do you run? Do you
that-
drive? Do you cycle? Do you skateboard? All
okay, so
those
there's-
things are actually the Captain's Walk.
Okay, so the Captain's Walk would include driving.
Yeah,
Good.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
I mean, it could, because one of the design concepts that Mike Sardina has reviewed in public forums is changing the configuration of Border Street in particular to make the lanes narrower, which does change things, and potentially use that to expand sidewalks. Again, it's
Right.
just conceptual, but it affects everything.
For the
So
sake
George,
of,
considering,
may I-
considering,
Susan, may I just for a sec jump in?
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Thanks. I think as Montana mentioned earlier, I think we need this to be very simple so people understand
Yeah.
what we're asking about, you know, and I think everyone has mentioned that terms like accessibility, et cetera, are maybe not understood by everybody. So I think we should, as Susan suggested, use some basic concepts like are the walking paths clear, or are the walking passages accessible, not accessible, but you know, approachable, or whatever word you want to use, and keep it simple. You know, how do you get to the harbor, and do you find it difficult to get around the harbor? Something like that, so people understand what we're asking for.
Yeah.
right, but what is the result? So, but once you get the answer, how do you use the answer? So I want to make sure that we design it so that we get or how might we design it so that we get answers that we can use in a specific way?
Well,
That's-
I'm not a,
that's my
you know,
question
an
about
engineer.
designing.
I don't know the many options that would be available, but once we know the need. I'm seeing this as an assessment of the need. And then to go from there, then.
Need
talk to
the
experts.
assessment of the need
It's
for,
called the priority, or you know, what people's priorities are.
Right.
What if everybody comes back and all they care about is dock space and moorings for their boat,
Right.
and nobody gives a shit about
Right.
sidewalks? Well, that'll
Right,
tell us
right.
something.
Yeah, exactly. Too lazy to walk.
So I think this is step one. This is not, you know, it's a broad survey.
Right,
And I would offer, you know, it's meant to cover at least all the activities very
Yeah.
minimally. I mean, Susan, you brought up something, I scratched my head about it a couple of months ago, and you said, what
About
about
swimming.
swimming?
Yeah.
And I was like, nobody swims in the harbor. And then like,
that's because we
yeah,
never put it in the plan. Oh,
well,
no, we forgot.
there's not a good.
well,
there's
it
not
is
a
in the
beach.
plan, but it's just nowhere to launch it, that's the
Yeah,
problem.
but those are things that, you know, what if a resounding number of people in their open-ended comments said, I really wish there was, you know, a small swimming area in the harbor.
Right,
That would be an interesting thing to hear, but, you know, who knows?
I mean,
Right.
it's almost as if it's swimming, parking, mooring, you know, I mean, there's some big issues that we could.
Let me also just point out that the three of us are all members of the same club. So, I think that we have to be careful about our own biases. We're definitely Parker Avenue centric between the three of us. We're definitely rowing centric, and we're definitely organization centric.
I will take exception to that, Suze. I mean, I think that I belong to a lot of clubs, probably everyone listed here.
Yeah.
And I also think that, if anything, that my interest in all of the involvement in this organization is about public accessibility.
Right, but we are all very involved in all of that. So
That's why,
so I'm-
we're trying to broaden this and test it.
Right.
We're broadening it to other commissions
Yeah.
and we want to test it. So
Yeah.
what other things would you do besides that?
No, I think that's great. And I think it's important to remember that no matter what we come up with, we're going to miss something that's really important to somebody else who feels very differently about things than we do. I mean,
I think
I
think
think we all share a lot of pride in the harbor.
where I think we're also headed though, which is beneficial to this, is simplifying it and providing, open-ended. I think I'm positive there will be a sufficient amount of open-ended question that if somebody has something to say, they can say it. We just, need to figure out what the balance is of specific multiple choice versus having a couple of open-ended. I mean, if we get 100 surveys back and there's 2 open-ended questions, then we'll have 200 open-ended things, which I think we'll really value, but how we make sense of that, we'll have to determine once we close the survey and try to make sense of it.
Yeah.
Because they could be all over the place.
Yeah, there may be some cool AI tools for analyzing stuff.
I mean, it'll be a good problem to have.
Yeah, that would be a good problem to have.
Well, I think Montana, let me ask are people still viewing this?
Yes, there's David Sinowski and Mike, who I want to assume is Mike Dickey because he's been in a few before, but I'm not really sure.
I guess I'll just ask for anybody in the public, if you have questions or comments you'd like this subcommittee to hear, please raise your hand or on Zoom. Is that the way they do it? They use the Zoom?
Yeah, if they raise their hand, I'll pull them in.
Okay. So thank you all for participating. So Montana, you've said you've marked up the survey and you can share it with me. I guess as I go forward, I'm a little suspect of my own ability not to inject all of my analytical detail into it, but we do need to take, another cut at this and simplify it based on the discussion we've had, which I think has been really good. And I'm willing to do that. And I think, we need to move it that direction. And then anyway, so Montana, if you could send me your comments, that would be good.
Yeah.
Susan, you say you both marked up the Word document and I have access to the Google Doc as well. But will you be able to send me your marked up document, Susan?
I don't know. I'll try.
All right, no
You
big
should
deal.
be able to if it's a Microsoft Word.
And Lisa, I've
George, and I can send you additional comments on marking this up, but I don't know how fun that will be for you to have to try to.
No, that's all.
3 different people's input, but I can also.
Actually, Lisa, I'll stop you there. If you'd already done the work, because that's how you like to do the work, fine.
I marked it up, yeah, but.
Well, then take a picture.
But I did it on a paper version, so I can go in.
No, take a picture.
Right, sounds good.
I might do that.
Take a picture. It doesn't need to be all fancy on the doc. I think that what I'd like to do is with that, come back with another cut, and I may work with you guys in the meantime somehow. I mean, my format that I'm used to is Microsoft Word. Again, getting back to this, we could use Google Docs. I mean, the thing's simple enough, but in any case, Lisa, I know sometimes you have challenges with that.
No,
I
the problem is
figure-
that I have so many different Google accounts because of Word, because of my office, it just gets
All
overwhelming.
right, well,
I prefer Word if that is,
all right.
unless people really want to do Google Docs, because
And
you can,
right now, it's a 2-pager and it needs to
yeah,
get, and
exactly.
it's also got to get narrowed down. So it's got to be more in the, call it 1-page plus latitude. Let me ask Montana, what is your thoughts based on the discussion and otherwise about using the Google Forms as the survey format? Susan, you brought up our survey 123, but yeah, I really don't think we need the geographic capabilities of that tool.
Yeah, I think Google Surveys is the best for, I think that's the most used, so it'll be the easiest for people to get access to. And I know it's easy on your phone. I know it's easy on your laptop. If you want to make a QR code, we can do that too. So people can just like shoot right over to it on their phones. Um, Google Survey is just like also the easiest to access, and like whoever's the main creator can give not editorial access, but like admin access to like say Lisa or Susan, if George, you're the creator. So
Mhm.
then all three of you guys could see how many people are responding and what their responses are.
Right.
Survey Monkey is just like fine. It's not the best in my opinion.
No.
I think Google is just the most universal.
Well,
That's-
since you have offered Montana to help us, my preference would be to continue down the line of using Google Surveys, unless
Okay.
we find a compelling reason not to.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And then we've talked, we don't need to cover again, but we have a pretty broad set of distributions that we're going to seek once we have the final survey, right? All these various lists of constituents that we would email the survey to and post the QR code, et cetera, in Wilcott Commons and wherever else we can do this to try and get people to respond.
The library and places like that.
Yeah. I guess I would say the normal public places. Susan, I think you'd mentioned, and we've talked with somebody about, a specific effort to at certain public days at Wilcott Commons to provide, some support for people accessing the survey if they'd like.
That's great.
Then in terms of this coming week, so I would like to contact Rec Commission, Sidewalks, and Historic Commission and ask them to give us 10 or 15 minutes on there. That's a lot, but we'll say 10 minutes to talk about this survey. And get their input to it. I think the thing I'm cautious of, I believe when we went, remind me, Lisa and Susan, when we went to the Open Space Committee, we did not show them the survey. We showed them, a high-level document showing the type of topics that we were
Yes.
interested, what our objective was, and what the topical areas we were trying to address in order to get get them talking about what might be included from their perspective on recreation. And I'm sure I have that document, just not in front of me. Do you guys think that's still a good approach?
Yes,
Is to give them a high level
Yeah,
and to
especially since
discuss
we're
what
still
our
drafting.
objectives are?
but still drafting it.
Okay. So looking at it, I don't think, if we want, we can all attend. However, I don't think that's needed. But there's one meeting that I can't attend, which is the Sidewalks Committee. It's on, what is it? January 11th at noon via Zoom. And I have a doctor's appointment at that time and I can't do it. And Sidewalks is, however, one I would like to attend because it's really specific to Captain's Walk. And the select board sort of picked up on that when I met with them back in November. But I can send this around, and if we can't attend them all, good, whatever. But what I'd like to do is I'll send an email to you, Lisa, and to Susan, and see your interest in potentially spending, a very narrow,
Mhm.
call it a 10-minute slot, because they've already set their agendas. We'd be asking to,
Sure.
to add on to it. and just present what we're trying to accomplish. And I think what we're doing is, we are legitimately soliciting topics that may be of interest to them that overlap with the concept of recreation. And we're also, trying to engage them in this topic. But we also would love to, if they have distribution, like the Rec Commission and the Historic Commission, if they have distribution, that's another way for us to get the survey out. Sound good?
Yep, great. I'm just looking at calendars.
Yeah, so Rec Commission is January 10th at 7 o'clock. I can make that. It's via Wilcott and Zoom. Again, assuming we contact them and they're okay with us being on the agenda. Historic Commission is January 8th, 6:45 p.m. in the library. So those are two that
The
I
other
could
one is
make.
noon. Okay,
And then Sidewalks is at noon.
okay. I can check and double back and tell you if I'm available for.
Okay. And if we get, it's funny, I've been to select board and I've heard other commissions or committees say, yeah, we're trying to collaborate with all these guys. And one time I heard, yeah, we're trying to collaborate with Harbor Committee. I was like, huh. Really? Happy to collaborate, but not aware
Smallest
anybody's ever
word.
tried. Yeah, just email or call,
Yeah,
make it
yeah,
happen.
yeah.
So I think, we're trying to put our money where our mouth is here
Right.
and
I think
get
it's great.
broader support.
Yeah, and since, I had never, watched or heard or been involved in the open space committee before, so that was very helpful. And I thought it was interesting to hear some of the perceptions.
Yeah, and what's
Yeah.
cool, our reaching out to them means, come what may, they may reach out to us for
Right.
help in certain areas, and we would,
Yep.
love that type of integration at the
Mhm.
committee level in
Especially
Cohasset.
in open space, no question.
I have one-
Montana, I see, Susan, you just sent me something.
Yeah, I just sent you the comments. I don't know if you can see the comments. They're not very elaborate. I think we covered them.
Okay.
But Montana, I have one question. Do you happen to know if we use the Google form thing, is there a way of confirming that it's only one entry per email? Or do you know is there any like Cohasset town institutional ways of doing it so that we prevent spam and spam answers?
Unfortunately not. If you guys require emails to, like, if you require people to put their emails, that's like the only way you can really prevent spam. Because that will like show that whoever, like the person who entered it, but on the town side, no, there's no like real prevention.
So then if we have open-ended questions, then we can tell by what people say. So if they
Yeah,
reference places that aren't in Cohasset, Massachusetts, then we can assume they're spam.
I would, yeah, it's a worry. I mean, and not having experience with this, it's probably a real risk. that
Well,
we
it's
get some
also,
crappy stuff.
yeah, I mean, I think we should also just, it's non-binding data, right? We
No,
can
it's
use the
just-
data and it's not gonna bind us to take action. Like if
No,
somebody
we're not.
puts
It's
up
just
the ballot.
we're putting a lot of work into it.
Yeah,
We're going to put a lot of work into capturing the results.
Yeah.
If there's any reasonable way to try and protect it, who knows? It's going to go out to, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 email addresses, and 10% of them are hacked on any given day. So who knows how important it'll be for somebody to mess up this survey.
Right, but we'll just give it a go, and we do huge surveys in my office all the time. We have 800 employees. We have 2,500 private attorneys who take it. You're gonna get some snide, ridiculous remarks from people. It's just almost.
they better be funny. That's all I have to say.
Usually from my office, they're not. But you easily discount them, because they usually can't help themselves, they're not instructive, they're just snide, and so you say, okay. But
Right. Actually, that's a really useful word. We want the input to be instructive.
Yeah.
Instructive and constructive.
Yeah.
And that's one of our goals. So I like the way you put that.
Montana, what have we not asked or considered as part of this discussion from your perspective? What have we missed?
I think you guys are checking all the boxes right now at the step you are at in terms of drafting. I think you guys are doing a good job of being aware of the audience you will be sending it out to, who those response, like what those responses might look like. I think going in front of the select board is definitely the biggest thing in terms of like telling the community, because once it's in front of the select board, it's a more of a trickle down approach than just like going hard. Like if you guys just put out the survey yourself instead of going in front of another harbor, and the fact that you're also interacting with other committees too and bringing this to their attention, because something that I was going to do is like literally just send this survey, like when the time comes, I'm just going to copy and paste every single email of every committee member because they're all residents. So if you can put this on their forefront right now, that's great. So when the
That's
time comes that
fabulous.
it shows up in their email, they'll be like, oh, I actually know what this is. I know what the purpose is. George came to me X amount of months ago. They're following through. I think that's great. I think you guys are asking the right questions for now. I'll obviously tell you guys if you need any more input, but I think you're doing great right now.
So just to make sure I understand, thank you, Montana. We reviewed this with select board. They encouraged us to go forward. I don't expect to go forward. Don't need any more permission from select board. They think we're doing this, right?
Yeah, like
Okay.
I mean, from what I can tell, like what AEC is doing is like they're going in front of select board to show them that they have this survey as like a courtesy, but like you don't need permission to put it out
Yeah.
there. Like you're just letting them know like we're being proactive, we have our priorities, like we want to get the community's opinion. We want to let you know that we're doing this. So like in 6 months from now or a year from now in 2025, we can come back to you and show you these results in comparison
Okay.
to the Harbor Committee's priorities.
So we had that, I'll just say we had that discussion with
Yeah.
select board in November and they're so
Perfect.
following through. Go ahead, Susan.
I just thought of something that is a very important idea, and I wish I'd thought of it earlier instead of last minute. But nonetheless, Montana, are there questions that we should be asking in this survey that will get us data that is needed for grant applications?
Very good question.
Or how might we collect data that will help bolster our Cohasset grant applications?
I mean, from my perspective, I'm just coming from like a resiliency and sustainability point. I think, but so like my perspective, I don't think is related necessarily to your survey, and I don't want to like derail it too much, because I'd be like, are you concerned about like coastal erosion? Are you like worried about like seawalls and stuff like that? And like I feel like that would take away from the focus of your recreational purpose. In terms of like infrastructure, I just don't have enough like knowledge or information to say like what those questions should be to help with the grant. I'm just coming from like an environmental standpoint, so I don't want to take away from what you guys are doing.
Okay, but that's a last minute discussion point. I'm sorry, but maybe we can all think about that and see if there's anything else that we can think of that should be just like a really distinct question that gives a grant making organization the data that they need in order to say yes to a Cohasset application. So if any of us think of anything that would fall under that would make this really useful, or if we hear of any needs from other committees that we know, that are, I mean, I think just that context of what is a grant make, because they're always looking for data, and you're as an organization, you're always like, oh, we don't have that data. It would take us so much money to actually find that data through a survey. So if we can, this would be a good thing to pick. This would be a valid thing to make it longer.
I think
I think we're broad based, so I do feel like that there's probably, if we do identify priorities, we're going to need to go out and capture data on certain priorities, and particularly, if we think a grant is what's going to be possible to enable a priority, that would probably might be a follow-up, given the broad base of this survey.
Well, and broadly, I think a lot of grant making organizations are concerned with the access. So if there's people who don't have access to a public good, then that might help justify money being spent on Cohasset, which is otherwise really hard to justify spending state or federal money here,
Yeah,
your tax bracket.
I think a topic that you guys could think about in terms of a grant, just going back to like safety is public health. In relation to like recreation on the harbor, it's pretty broad, but it can also go down a lot of roads. But that would also be something that like Pam Fahey and Charlotte could help you guys with, but that's just like one idea in terms of like grants, because I know they're always looking for grants, and I know there's the big Government Island project coming up. I don't know a lot about what's going on, but that's like the only topic that I can really think about that you could possibly work into this.
I'd be happy to
Okay.
go talk to those guys. I like them. Ask.
Yeah, I think that I appreciate the suggestion, but I think, and it's a great idea, Susan, for you to go speak to them as far as being harbor committee connected. But I'm afraid of ladening this particular survey with a lot of things. I also think that if I was and I do have experience of being a peer grant administrator for the Justice Department, I would really question the validity of this survey as, where it's community based and et cetera. So I think we should see it for what it is, and just try to get out there and do it. But
Yeah, I
I
mean-
definitely think, Susan, you should go and talk to them for another piece of our work.
And then, and maybe Lisa, you can think about like, how might we gather the kind of data that would be considered valid by a grant making organization. For
It's
another
usually implemented by a professional group, that has all those controls.
but in any case, we will learn a lot. This is the first survey of this type, other than using your favorite, sticky notes on a wall with Jack Kennelly. We're hopefully reaching a broader base
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
Yep. Awesome. Well,
Wonderful.
we're actually right on time. Is there any other topics or new business to bring before this subcommittee before we adjourn?
The only other question I have is, George, are any of the other subcommittees meeting, or what's going on that front? It's Christmas, so it's okay.
The answer is no, none of them have met.
Yeah.
And however, there is an opportunity. I had a very interesting meeting yesterday with Chris Senior and Michelle Leary and Lori Gibbons about the 2024 capital plan that comes out of Harbor that needs to be presented at annual meeting in June. And there is some work to do by the other subcommittee, the capital, or the whatever we call it, the financial capital subcommittee. And then I need to get together with and sort of. So the answer is no, this is the only committee that's met, and you get a huge attaboy.
And I know we're meeting on the 17th. I was just curious, that's all.
Yeah, no, that's it. And so we'll have some momentum here.
Yeah, because I need to at some point decide, and I have the governance subcommittee. I was waiting till the holidays were over to start looking at some of the other things, but I just want to make sure that it's hand in glove to some of the issues that we're dealing with. Great.
I will have a bunch of people testing the Harbor Walk. I just did it recently, and I'm now going to test it on the 13th before my father's memorial service. So.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That's exactly, the beauty of the whole thing. I'm just like, it's so easy. It's so right. And the Lighthouse Keepers is a great resource for people in town.
Good for you. Well, that was a very nice tribute you sent out.
It was fantastic, Susan. Thank you for sharing that. I was very, very touched.
Thanks. Glad you guys got to know.
I can't remember if I have to do Robert's rules, but all in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Did we get all of the information we needed from the people who are not subcommittee members?
I think we invited them.
Yeah,
to
no
raise
one
their
raised their
hands.
hand.
Okay.
Montana, thank you.
Oh,
And I
wait. Someone just raised their hand. Hold on.
Okay.
David Sinowski. He's joining right now. Hi, David. You're muted right now.
Oh, sorry, David Sinkowski. I'm with the Situate Waterways Committee.
Oh, hi, David.
So David Deneen, who was on earlier, had to drop off. We're much earlier than you, just embarking on this survey subject and how we would do it. So we were just listening in to learn from you. So I thank you for sharing.
That's
Wow,
great.
I appreciate you coming on to say that, and we're all trying to learn from whoever did it better just before us. So yeah, we're working on it. Happy to share materials if you'd like.
That's
The
great,
stuff
David.
it'll be posted on cohasset.mass.gov's website at some point.
Right.
David, have you been looking at any other town who've done that? I mean, that was one of the questions I asked Montana at the beginning of the meeting, if we know of other municipalities or communities who have undertaken this sort of.
No, we're just starting to talk about in our meeting that, hey, maybe we should do this.
Mhm.
And so we're very early, and so we were listening in. I think that the Marshfield idea is a good idea to see what they're doing. I just listen to you. We have some of the same challenges you have with the different groups, because the waterways is just that, waterways. And most of what you're talking about is really for Situate would be Conservation Committee, our
Mhm.
parks.
Mhm.
So you're really crossing many lines for us that we don't even normally talk to each other, much less. So yeah, it should be interesting. So
Yeah, great.
Thank you,
Well,
David.
glad. Thank you for listening in, and if you
If you move to Cohasset, we'll recruit you.
Well, we love informal members, so please continue to, swing by and especially if you come with a wonderful template, the perfect survey to send.
I came to learn from you. Sorry.
all right.
All right.
Thanks a lot, David.
Have a good evening.
All
Thank
right,
you.
take care. Then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for attending. I'll let you go for the evening. We'll be in
Great.
touch.
All right, good to see
Thanks
you all.
much, Jenna. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. Thank you.